If you're a basketball parent, one of the biggest questions is, how can I help my child in their basketball development? I talk to parents of players every single day, and it almost always leads back to this. Am I doing the right things for my child's development? What should I be doing based on the stage that they're at? What do I do when it comes to training, when it comes to AAU, when it comes to the teams they're playing on? How do I make sure that I put them in the best position to be successful as a basketball player? So I wanted to create this guide to basketball development for parents so that you have an exact roadmap on what steps to follow at each stage, so that it takes all of the confusion out of it and gives you clarity to make sure that your child is focusing on the right thing at the right time, so that your player is developing the right way without any of the guesswork. By the way, I put together a free basketball parent starter kit that goes even deeper than this. We talk about a lot of common mistakes that I see parents make with their players, how to know what trainers to use, what trainers not to use, how to navigate dealing with coaches, how to navigate AAU and the competitive landscape as a whole, how to navigate recruiting and the different level that your player may be at, and how to make sure you put them in the best position long term. That's completely free. Check the top link in the description down below. If you don't know who I am, my name is Ethan Koza. I have another basketball training channel with about 90,000 subscribers called Vision Driven Basketball. That channel is really geared towards players themselves. What I've noticed as a varsity head coach, as a coach who's been at the high school level for going on 7 seasons now, and having my own basketball training business where I'm around players who are in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, professional, and seeing the amount of struggles that parents go through trying to figure all this stuff out, I realize that there's not a lot of resources out there to help them and guide them through this. So that's why I created this channel. I get this question more than anything else, which is about how do I help my child in their development? So I want to give you clarity and confidence that you're doing the right things and you have a plan that you can follow. So the first thing I want to do is break this down based on the age they're at, the stage that they're at. So we'll start off with elementary or beginner level. So generally ages 5 or 6 through about 11. And this is where we want to do 2 major things. The first thing we want to do is we want to build their athletic base. So this is where it's really important that they're playing a bunch of different sports: basketball, soccer, baseball, softball, volleyball, football, whatever. I even know a lot of players who swam growing up and ended up being really good athletes. So I don't have any data to back up whether or not swimming is a great way to develop athleticism in comparison to some of these other sports, but that's just something that I've seen. At that age, their brains are the most malleable that they will ever be, so they can learn the different athletic movements way quicker than they'll be able to when they're older. So it's really important that you get them just doing different things, learning different movements, and really what you see is that as you get older and older, the first ceiling, the first limiting factor that players run into is their athletic ceiling. So if you have a player who's a better athlete early on, they can learn a lot of the skills, how to shoot better, how to handle the ball better, how to play defense. That stuff can be taught later on. It's really hard to make massive jumps forward athletically. That's why at this age, it's really important that you help them develop those baseline athletic abilities by encouraging them to play different sports, try different things, go outside, play with their friends. You go outside and play different sports with them. It's really important. And then the second thing we want to do for them at this age is help them develop a positive association with basketball. We want them to look at basketball as fun. And we don't want it to feel like a job to them. We don't want to feel like there's a lot of pressure on them to be anything specific. We want them to enjoy basketball. So focus on fun and not perfection. When we talk about developing some of the baseline skills, stuff like ball handling, learning how to dribble with either hand, being able to do some basic stationary drills, maybe some stuff on the move. Don't even get too caught up in all of that, though, or any sort of their technique or whatever. Just help them learn, okay, here's how you dribble, here's how you shoot, here's what a layup is. Encourage them to put the ball in the basket. At that age, all kids want to do is put the ball in the basket. So if you can help them learn how to shoot a layup and consistently put the ball in the basket, they're going to enjoy it. Don't worry about their form being right. Make sure you jump off this foot, that foot. We just want them to enjoy playing basketball and seeing the ball go in. Same thing when it comes to shooting. Allow them to just go shoot. Allow them to take the shots that they want. A lot of people, maybe this is a controversial take. I don't think it is based on my experience. A lot of trainers, a lot of parents are so caught up with their shooting form early on and like, oh, if they shoot, like that when they're young, it's going to ruin their form when they get older. I actually think that it's kind of the opposite. You want to let them shoot the shots they want to shoot. They're going to watch basketball. They're going to play NBA 2K, and they're going to see all these guys shooting threes. They're going to want to go shoot threes. They're going to go shoot them, and they're going to struggle to do it. And when you see them frustrated with their inability to make it, that's when they're going to be much more welcoming to you giving them help with their form. Hey, move your hand like this. Hey, try doing this. They're going to be much more receptive to that if you don't put any sort of boundaries on them early on. And then the last thing I think is super important when it comes to developing their skills, but also helping them fall in love with the game, is play one-on-one with them as much as you can. right? There's something that's going to help them learn to enjoy basketball, like seeing mom or seeing dad enjoy basketball. And also, they're going to enjoy being able to compete with you. It's a great way for them to learn the game. I've talked to 2 different high-level coaches over the past few months who both have kids who play basketball, and they both said the same thing to me, which I thought was really interesting. And they talk about how they used to play one-on-one against their kids all the time growing up, even when they were young, like 4, 5, 6 years old. And obviously at that age, you're going to win every single time, right? But kids pick up on things so quick, especially at that age. So they're going to notice things that you're doing to beat them. They're going to be much more able to pick those things up and start to do them themselves because, like I said, at that age, their brains are so malleable. Even if you're not a super high-level player yourself, I think the idea of helping them learn how to enjoy the game, connecting with you over basketball, just playing one-on-one is a great way to do this. Really how I would categorize this age, if I could, in like a sentence or two, your job right now is not to make them the best basketball player in the world. Your job is to lay the foundation so that later on they want to become the best basketball player in the world. Now, the second stage would be middle school. So that would be like 12 to 14 years old. At this point, you're going to start to recognize how much they enjoy the game. There are some kids who are going to be absolutely in love with it at this point, and you can scale up with what they're doing. And there's still going to be some that maybe enjoy it, but kind of have one foot in, one foot out. We have to understand is that you still want to be patient at this age as well, because I know so many players. My younger brother was this way. He ended up going to play college basketball, but before he got to high school, he didn't want to work out. He didn't want to go to the gym. I was doing all those things. I'm inviting him to come with me, and he just didn't want to do it. Then he got to high school and fell in love with it. Ended up becoming better than I was and went on to become a 2-year starter and play in the NCAA tournament. So everybody has a different timeline. So again, at this age, take a note of where they're at in terms of how much they enjoy it, how committed they are, and don't pressure them to do more than what they're ready for. At this point, they want to start to expand their skills and then introduce a few more concepts. So understanding spacing and understanding cutting and understanding, off-ball movement, off-ball screens, how to use ball screens. And then I think some basic defensive concepts, on-ball, gap, help defense, weak side help defense. I think this is also a good age to start to introduce strength training, even if it's light, even if it's only 1 or 2 days a week. I think it's really good because, again, we want to build that athletic foundation as young as we can so that they have a higher ceiling as they get older. Now, the other thing that I would really encourage, especially if your kid really enjoys it and they really want to get better, is place them in as many competitive environments as you can. So if they have older brothers or sisters, encourage them to play with them, encourage them to go and play with their friends as well. Something else that I saw that's really interesting about players at this age is how beneficial it is to play against older players. And at that age, when they're 12 years old, if they go and play against a 15, 16-year-old, they're probably going to lose unless they're really advanced. But what they're going to do, what this is going to cause for them is that their brain is actually going to start to pick up on what they're seeing. So they may go and defend a 15, 16, 17-year-old, and they may get smoked. They may have no chance. But while they physically won't be able to keep up with them, they're going to start to pick up mentally on what they do, what the little tells are. Okay, when that guy does this, he goes right. Or when he does that, he pulls up. Or that move keeps creating space for him. So physically, they're not there yet, but mentally, they're going to be so ahead of players their own age because they're experiencing these players who are more advanced than they are. So encouraging them to play with older players is great. Obviously, like I said, if they have older brothers and sisters, have them go play with them. If you have some ability, playing against them as often as you can. I just saw a clip. Shout out to my guy, Danny Cooper, who's a basketball trainer. He had a podcast where he had on a player named Jake West, who's going to play at Northwestern next year in the Big Ten. And he talked about how when he was a kid, his parents used to drive him around to random parks in Philly and just drop him off and have him go play. I'm not necessarily saying you need to do that, but what I'm saying is getting them in different environments that are competitive where they have to compete really hard to play, maybe against better players or older players, is really going to help their development, especially if they're into it. But like I said, if they're not, you may not be able to push them this hard this early. And then the third stage is high school. So usually by this age, you're going to kind of know how they feel with basketball, whether they love it, whether they're just kind of sort of into it. And again, give them a little bit of time because 9th, 10th grade maybe just be the warm-up for them, and they may fall in love with it at that point. So again, you want to match their energy in terms of how much they care. At this point is where you really want to start helping them refine their skills and develop a more of an advanced understanding of how to play the game of basketball. So understanding offensive and defensive concepts, understanding different systems that they may play in. This is where strength training becomes increasingly important, especially at the high school level, Like, this is where they should be probably 3-4 days a week working on their strength, building that athletic foundation and building on the foundation that they've hopefully been building for a couple of years at this point. And then at this point, by the time they get to 9th, 10th grade is where you want to have those conversations about, hey, do you want to try and play at the next level? Where are you at with that? And then doing stuff to start to prepare them for that. So 9th, 10th grade, get them around high-level basketball, playing in competitive AAU tournaments with competitive teams, going to different colleges, elite camps, or different showcases just to be around talented players. And then helping them develop some of those skills that really matter. So their communication, their level of ownership and self-advocacy, emotional control, ability to overcome adversity. Those are skills that they need to be developing and have developed as they are in high school and going through the process. So now I want to talk about 4 mistakes that I see when it comes to parents and their players' development. The first one is pushing too hard too early. Like I mentioned, the goal for you is to facilitate an environment that makes them fall in love with the game, because you yourself are never going to be the one who makes them fall in love with it. And again, you do this by being around the game with them, playing with them, going outside in the driveway, shooting around with them, communicating with them about how they're feeling with basketball, how are things going, what do they feel like they're good at, what do they want to get better at, and especially early on, just making sure that they love being on a basketball court. The second thing is overscheduling without any sort of rest. And this is especially a thing as they get older. They're playing for their high school team, they're with a trainer, they're playing AAU in the spring and the summer. Maybe they have a fall league as well. There's a lot of things going on. So finding time for them to just take a step back. Usually the best times to do this are like right at the end of the winter season, so February or March, depending on how far their team makes it, and right before AAU, giving them a little bit of time to take a breather from it. And then usually the end of summer, so August, when their team probably isn't playing in a summer league and maybe their workouts have slowed down, giving them time to not just rest because of making sure that they're staying healthy, but also just to give them an opportunity to miss the game a little bit and come back with a new appreciation for it, because absence makes the heart grow fonder. The third thing is focusing on short-term performance over growth. I just talked about it in one of my previous videos, but you have such a great ability to facilitate the entire development of your player because you can keep them in what we refer to as the Goldilocks zone. This just means a zone where they're failing about 30 to 70% of the time. And that might mean, they're not going out and dominating every game. It might mean that, some games they're dealing with ups and downs in terms of their coaches playing them, the coach is playing this many minutes, this guy's playing over them. All that sort of stuff is adversity that is good for them. But if you're really focused on exactly how they're doing game to game when they're 13, 14, 15 years old, and you prioritize that over their long-term growth, you might take them out of a situation in which they're being challenged, they're being pushed, and put them in a situation where they're going to put up great numbers. Maybe the competitive level is lower, but they're not going to grow as much long-term, and eventually they're going to plateau at a really low level, and that's not what you want. So prioritize them getting better. Put them in challenging situations. Force them to have to figure some stuff out on their own without you being the one who's always going to the coach, always dealing with this and dealing with that, and give them a little bit of ownership in this. And then the fourth mistake is getting too caught up in the prestige or the name of a team as opposed to fit and development. I see it all the time in my area, and I know it's in a lot of areas, that everyone is so caught up in the name of the team they're playing for when it comes to AAU. If they have a good situation where they're being challenged and they're getting playing time is the most important thing, especially the younger that they are, but even older players, it matters a ton. That's what should be the main priority, as opposed to playing with this team because they're on that circuit or going to that team because they have that player. That stuff certainly matters, but it has to also be taken into account with how much are they developing here? How many opportunities are they getting here? Are they getting to have chances to impact the game consistently? Are they actually growing as a player? As opposed to going to a team that maybe has a better name, but they're now guy 8, guy 9 on that team when they used to be guy 2, guy 3. There's no right answer with that, but I think it's really important to just ask, how much is this going to benefit them a year from now? And if you approach it through that lens, then you're going to make really good decisions when it comes to their overall development. Hopefully that gives you some ideas on how to structure your players' development and how to make sure you aid them the best you can. Like I mentioned, I have that free basketball parent starter kit down below that's going to go more in depth into this stuff and even more stuff talking about AAU, talking about recruiting, and then talking about really making sure you maximize their development. That's completely free. Check it out. Top link down below. Appreciate you for watching. If you have any questions, drop them down below. Let me know. I'd love to connect.